Harold Holt was the Prime Minister of Australia. On a summer day in 1967, he went for a swim. He walked into the ocean and was never seen again. The official story is simple. Thus, he drowned. His body was swept out to sea. But some people don't believe that. They believe a story that sounds like it was ripped from a spy novel. They believe Harold Holt was a spy for Communist China and that he didn't die that day. They believe he faked his own death. It was Sunday, December 17th, 1967, a hot day near the end of the year. Holt was 59 years old. He wasn't in the capital, Canberra, dealing with politics. He was at his holiday home in Portsea, Victoria. It was a place he loved. He spent the morning with friends in his neighborhood. They watched a lone yachtsman, Sir Francis Chichester, sail into Port Phillip Bay. It was a relaxed, casual day, the kind of day a leader needs. After lunch, Holt decided he wanted to swim. He was with 4 other people: his neighbor, Marjorie Gillespie, her daughter, and 2 other friends. He drove them to one of his favorite spots. It wasn't a calm, family-friendly beach. It was Cheviot Beach, a rugged, isolated place known for its dangerous surf and strong undertows. It was part of an area controlled by the military, so it was quiet. Holt knew the place well. He had swum there many times, but this day was different. The tide was high. The waves were big and messy. His friends thought the water looked too rough. One of them decided not to go in. Holt was a strong swimmer. He was confident. He loved the ocean. He once said he felt a hypnotic effect from the sea. He told his friends he knew the beach like the back of his hand. So he went in, he waded into the churning water, he swam out. His friends watched from the sand. They saw him swimming, then he seemed to be in trouble. The water was violent. It was pulling him around, he was there, and then he was gone. He disappeared beneath the waves. His friends stared at the water, waiting for him to resurface. He never did, and panic set in. They raised the alarm. The response was massive. It became one of the largest search and rescue operations in Australian history. The Navy sent divers. The Air Force sent planes. The Army searched the coastline. Police and local volunteers walked the beaches and cliffs. They searched for 2 days. They found nothing. Not a trace of him, not his body, not even his swimming trunks. It was as if the ocean had simply swallowed him whole. The official conclusion was swift and straightforward. Harold Holt had accidentally drowned. The coroner didn't even hold a formal inquest. The case was clear. He swam in dangerous conditions and was overcome by the sea. His body was likely trapped in kelp or a rock ledge, or it was pulled so far out to sea it would never be found. It was a national tragedy, a terrible accident. The nation mourned its lost leader. The world leaders, including U.S. President Lyndon B. Johnson, flew to Australia for a memorial service. And for a while that was the end of the story. A sad but simple story, but the lack of a body created a void. And into that void, conspiracy theories began to grow. The most elaborate and the most persistent is the spy theory. The theory didn't just appear out of thin air. It was laid out in a book published in 1983. The book was called The Prime Minister Was a Spy, written by a British journalist named Anthony Gray. The book's claims were explosive. Gray argued that Harold Holt had been a secret agent for the People's Republic of China since the 1930s. He wasn't just a low-level informant, he was a high-ranking spy, passing secrets to Beijing for decades. According to Gray's book, Holt's disappearance was not a death, it was an extraction, a pre-planned escape. The story goes like this. By 1967, Holt believed his cover was about to be blown. Allied intelligence agencies were getting close to exposing him. He needed a way out. So his Chinese handlers arranged a pickup. The swim at Cheviot Beach was the rendezvous. The book claims that while Holt was in the water, 2 Chinese frogmen met him. They helped him to a waiting Chinese submarine that was lurking just offshore. He was taken aboard and spirited away to China to live out the rest of his days in comfortable retirement. The disappearance was a perfectly executed disappearing act. It's a wild story. It's dramatic, it's intriguing, and it captured the public's imagination. But is there any truth to it? To figure that out, you have to look at the man, the politics of the time, and the pure logistics of the claim. First, let's look at Harold Holt himself. Does he fit the profile of a communist spy? On the surface, absolutely not. In fact, it's a bizarre suggestion. Holt was the leader of the Liberal Party, a conservative political party. He was a protege of Sir Robert Menzies, Australia's longest-serving prime minister, and a staunch anti-communist. Holt's entire political career was built on foundations that were deeply opposed to communism. His most defining policy as prime minister was his unwavering support for the United States in the Vietnam War. He famously visited President Johnson in America and, in a speech, declared that Australia was all the way with LBJ. This was not just rhetoric. Holt dramatically increased the number of Australian troops fighting against the communist forces in Vietnam. He introduced conscription to do it. This was a hugely controversial move in Australia, but it showed his commitment to the anti-communist cause. Why would a secret agent for Communist China send his own country's soldiers to fight against communists in Vietnam? Well, it makes no sense. It's the exact opposite of what a Chinese spy would be expected to do. Gray's book tries to explain this away. It suggests Holt was a sleeper agent of such deep cover that his actions were designed to make him seem unimpeachable. But that level of contradiction stretches credulity to its breaking point. It asks you to believe that the best way to serve China was to be its most effective enemy in the region. Then there's Holt's personality. He was seen as a friendly, open, and somewhat relaxed leader, especially after the formal and imposing Menzies. He was not a man known for secrets or a dark, hidden side. His friends and colleagues described him as straightforward. Of course, a good spy would appear that way, but there is nothing in his personal history, his letters, or his diaries that hints at a double life. No secret trips, no unexplained money, no coded messages, nothing. Now let's look at the logistics of the spy theory. Could a Chinese submarine have been waiting for him off Cheviot Beach? In 1967, this would have been an incredibly difficult and risky operation. Cheviot Beach is located near the entrance to Port Phillip Bay, a massive and busy waterway that leads to Melbourne, one of Australia's biggest cities. The entrance, known as the Rip, is notoriously treacherous with strong currents. It's a challenging place for any vessel to navigate secretly. The waters off the coast are also relatively shallow. A submarine of that era would have had a hard time operating undetected so close to shore. And we have to remember the context. The area was a restricted military zone. The Australian Navy had a major training base, Ashmas Cerberus, not far away. The idea that a Chinese submarine could sneak in, wait around, and sneak out without being detected by the Australian military seems highly improbable. China's naval capabilities in 1967 were also limited. Their submarine fleet was mostly made up of older, Soviet-designed models. They did not have the sophisticated, quiet submarines of today. An operation like this, thousands of miles from their home base, would have been a huge stretch for their navy at the time. And then there's the search. The search for Harold Holt was immediate and intense. The waters and airspace were swarming with military personnel and equipment for days, so they were looking for a single man. A large metal submarine would have been hard to miss. The Navy divers searched the seabed. The Air Force planes searched the surface. No one reported seeing a submarine. No one reported seeing frogmen. No one found any evidence of the secret rendezvous. The only evidence for the spy theory comes from the sources in Anthony Gray's book. Gray's main source was a man named Raymond Lee, a supposed double agent. Lee claimed to have seen Holt in China after his disappearance. But Gray never met Lee. He communicated with him through an intermediary. The entire story rests on the word of a shadowy figure whose identity and motives are impossible to verify. There is no corroborating evidence, no documents, no photographs, just a story told by one person. Other researchers have looked into Gray's claims and found them to be full of holes. For example, some of the specific intelligence that Holt supposedly passed to the Chinese was either already public knowledge or of little value. The motive for his extraction, that he was about to be exposed, is also not supported by any records from Australian or allied intelligence agencies. If ASIO, MI6, or the CIA were about to unmask the Australian Prime Minister as a Chinese spy, it would have been one of the biggest intelligence events of the Cold War. Yet, there is a complete absence of any official documentation to suggest this was the case. Years later, another writer, Ronald Titcomb, published his own book, The Holt Report, also claiming Holt was a spy who was part of a wider ring. Titcomb's claims also relied on anonymous sources and lacked hard evidence. They added fuel to the fire but didn't provide any concrete proof. So if the spy theory is so full of holes, what are the other possibilities? Some people have suggested suicide. This theory has a bit more grounding in reality, though it's still speculative. Holt was known to be in a lot of pain from a recurring shoulder injury. He was also reportedly facing some political pressure. His government's popularity was slipping, and he was facing challenges within his own party. Some friends said he seemed a bit down in the days before he disappeared. His wife, Zara, years later, gave some weight to this idea. She said he was tired and overworked. She thought it was possible he just let the sea take him. It's a sad thought, but it's more psychologically plausible than the spy theory. A man in physical and mental pain, feeling overwhelmed, could make a final impulsive decision. But again, there's no proof. He didn't leave a note. His mood on the day of his disappearance was described by his friends as cheerful and relaxed. Another theory, almost inevitable for the time, was that the CIA killed him. The idea was that Holt was starting to reconsider Australia's commitment to the Vietnam War, and the Americans couldn't have that. So they had him assassinated. This is a standard conspiracy theory trope, like the Chinese spy theory. It suffers from a complete lack of evidence. Holt's public and private statements showed no sign of him backing away from his support for the war. This leaves us with the simplest explanation, the one presented on day one. It was an accident. This is the theory that is supported by all the available evidence. The evidence is the location, the conditions, the witnesses, and Holt's own state of health. Cheviot Beach is a dangerous place. It is known for its powerful rip currents. These are strong channels of water that can pull a swimmer out to sea in seconds. On that day, the conditions were particularly bad. The witnesses on the beach all agreed on this. The surf was high and rough. Holt was 59 years old. He was a good swimmer, but he wasn't a young man. He also had a shoulder injury, which may have limited his strength. It's very easy to imagine what happened. A confident but aging man misjudged the power of the ocean he loved. He went for a swim, got caught in a rip, and was simply too exhausted or injured to fight it. He was pulled under and drowned. His body, caught in the strong currents, was carried far out to sea. It's a tragically common story on coastlines all over the world. The only thing that makes this one different is that the man was the Prime Minister. The police report filed at the time by a senior inspector, Jack Ford, concluded exactly that. He wrote that there was no indication of foul play and no indication of suicide. He put it down to a simple case of accidental drowning. Every serious historian and investigator who has looked at the case since has come to the same conclusion. So why does the spy theory refuse to die? Why, decades later, do people still talk about the Prime Minister who was spirited away in a submarine? There are a few reasons. The first, and most important, is the lack of a body. A body provides closure. It's the final, undeniable piece of evidence. Without it, there's always a sliver of doubt, a space for the imagination to fill. If they had found his body washed up on the beach the next day, there would be no conspiracy theories. The story would be a sad footnote in history, but because he just vanished, the story becomes a mystery. And people love a mystery. Second, the idea of a prime minister just drowning is somehow unsatisfying. It's a mundane end for a person of such importance. It feels random and pointless. A conspiracy theory, on the other hand, gives the event meaning. It makes Holt a central player in a grand secret drama. It makes his disappearance a matter of international espionage, not just a swimming accident. It feels more proportional to his status. A big man should have a big story. Third, the theory emerged during the Cold War. This was a time when the world was obsessed with spies. James Bond was in the cinemas. Real-life spy scandals like the Cambridge Five in Britain were in the newspapers. The idea that a high-ranking politician could be a secret agent for the other side wasn't just fiction, it was a real and present fear. The Holt spy theory fit perfectly into the anxieties of the era. And finally, it's just a great story. It has all the elements of a thriller, a secret life, a daring escape, frogmen, a submarine, and an international conspiracy. It's far more exciting than the sad reality. The truth is often simple and tragic. The conspiracy is complex and exciting. Given the choice, many people prefer the more exciting story. The enduring myth of Harold Holt, the spy, says more about us than it does about him. It shows our need for answers when there are none. It shows our fascination with secrets and power. It shows how easily a narrative can take hold, especially when it confirms our suspicions about a hidden world operating just beneath the surface of our own. But when you strip away the speculation and the thrilling narrative, you are left with the facts. A man went into the water. The water was rough. He was never seen again. The witnesses on the beach saw no submarine, no frogmen. The massive search found no evidence of an escape. Holt's political life was one of dedicated anti-communism, the complete opposite of what you would expect from a Chinese agent. The story of Harold Holt is not a story of espionage. It is a story of tragedy and a reminder of the power of the natural world. He was a man who loved the sea, but on one unfortunate Sunday the sea did not love him back. The legend of the spy who faked his death will likely live on, because it's a story too good to let go of. But the truth, in all its sad simplicity, is that the Prime Minister of Australia most likely just went for a swim and drowned.